What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel. This is the first video, I suppose, of the new season. It is Monday, the 16th of June. The transfer window is officially back open today, and coming up, we're going to look at all of the latest transfer news, both in and out of Celtic, some of which I've missed in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And then we're going to assess the Celtic squad, starting with the goalkeepers and the defence. This is the first of a three-part video series we're going to be bringing you over the next week or so, where we're going to look at the depth in each position, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the areas that need addressed during this summer transfer window. First of all, it's good to be back making some content. I thought it was important to take a wee break there after the end of the season. That was a long season, probably the longest season I can remember doing the channel. There was obviously no winter break. There were more Champions League games as well. In some ways, the season is still going on with FIFA and their new Club World Cup, which I think is a bit of a shambles. Scotland played those two friendlies last week as well against Iceland and Liechtenstein. It was, what is the point in that? I think it is a bit ridiculous, the football calendar these days. I think the players need a break mentally and physically. The pressure they have to deal with. I know they're obviously handsomely paid for it, but they're still human beings at the end of the day. And even as a fan going through that season there, it was game after game after game, and I think it's important that everybody gets a bit of a break and refreshes ahead of a new season. I think the quality of the game gets worse for it as well. Having constant games, I think the spectacle gets worse. The quality on the pitch is decreased because of it. I don't know how football goes forward for here, and I'll digress in a minute, but you never seem to see, once games and tournaments are added, them getting taken away again. It just keeps getting busier and busier, but I've enjoyed a couple of weeks break. It's good to be back, as I say, and let's turn our attention then to the transfer news. We'll start with the return of Kieran Tierney. It was the worst kept secret in all of football because we knew it was happening since the end of January. It was kind of strange that the club confirmed it, I think, in one of the official statements tied to the sort of mid-year report and the accounts. It wasn't really like a traditional signing announcement where they confirmed it on social media and everybody could get excited. They kept that until his Arsenal contract was coming to an end and he'd left, and they did it last week, which I think was the right thing to do, but we didn't really have that usual shock. You don't really get shock with transfer announcements nowadays, do you? Because it's been confirmed on social media weeks and weeks and weeks before the club gets around to the official stuff. But I thought they did well on unveiling him. It's brilliant to have him back. I think he's going to bring a lot of qualities to this Celtic team, some things that we don't have, some things that we're lacking of. I think it's great to have someone who's come through the youth academy back in the team, back in the squad. He's obviously gone and played at a high level at Arsenal, over in Spain with Sociedad. He'll be better for those experiences as a player and as a person. I think he's obviously a brilliant left back. I think his attitude to the game, his approach to the game, the physicality that he brings to the game, I think are all positive attributes that really enhance this current Celtic squad. I think that's certain things that we've lacked. If you look at certain games last season, certain periods of the season where we went through wee lows and dips, or we underperformed in some of the bigger games towards the end of the season, I think Kieran will bring us an intensity. I think he'll take on a bit of a leadership role within the squad now as well, given that he's 27 years of age. He's matured a bit. He's gone and had those experiences in different countries. And like I say, I think he's a perfect role model for players coming through the youth academy, but also with that steel and that determination that he brings to the squad, he is a perfect player to take up some form of leadership role as well. We know that he loves the club, and it'll be great to see him back out there on the pitch. We're going to come back to that when we look at the defence in a minute, and we'll look at all the different positions and where we need to strengthen, because I think left back, even with the arrival of Kieran, is a position where we definitely need to bring at least one more player in. Now, there's been so much transfer news, so many names linked. We are right at the start of silly season. You can't pick up your phone without seeing a new name linked with a move to Celtic. 19-year-old Calum Osmand is reported to have completed a medical. He is a Fulham striker. He scored 10 goals in Premier League 2 last season. He hasn't played a lot of first team football, but it looks like he is on the way to Celtic. I'm sure some of you have watched clips of him in the last couple of weeks. He looks like he can finish. He looks quite quick. He looks like a decent player. It's really difficult to gauge how ready he is to come in and impact the first team, where he'll be in the pecking order. I know the last striker that we signed, the last teenage striker we signed from Fulham on a free transfer, turned out to be all right, but it's really difficult to try and understand where he's going to fall in terms of this Celtic squad. Is he going to come in and replace someone like Johnny Kenny, who might want to go out and get more minutes? Or is he going to be a player that can surprise Brendan Rodgers and play a lot of first team minutes from the moment he arrives? It's difficult to say, having not played a lot of first team football. He seems to be highly regarded at Fulham and their system. Some of their supporters, going by, again, the reaction on social media, seem disappointed to be losing him. But it does look like Calum Osmand will become a Celtic player this summer. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll come back to talking about this in more detail over the next week when we get to assessing the squad in the forward areas, because obviously striker is the one that's top of everybody's list following Kyogo's departure in January. And I think the lack of depth in that position. So we'll come back to that one. In other news, Celtic are close to completing a £2 million deal for Benjamin Nygren from Nordsjælland in Denmark. He's a 23-year-old Swedish right winger. He plays predominantly off the right-hand side. He looks a good player. He scored 16 goals last season. He's tall, left-sided, scored some really good goals from the clips I've watched. It's really difficult. Again, you never know how a signing's going to go, but from watching YouTube clips, watching Y-Scout clips, he does look like a decent player. He's got 6 months left to run on his deal, so a £2 million transfer looks like it could be a bit of a bargain for Celtic if everything goes well. Personal terms are reported to be agreed. It's just a case of finalising the transfer with Nordsjælland before making the move. I think the big thing about this transfer in this report is, does it cast doubt on Nicholas Kühn's Celtic future? He was linked this morning with a £15 million move to RB Leipzig, where he was as a youth player. He obviously had that brilliant performance against them in the Champions League this season. And I think the big question mark would be, is Nygren going to come in and share minutes with Kühn? I don't think Kühn would be particularly happy with that, given the impact that he had last season. I know he really tailed off in the second half of the campaign. But there was links to Newcastle and other clubs in January when he was right at the peak of that good form. And then this morning, again, that link to RB Leipzig as well. So it does seem like there's some interest in Nicholas Kühn. Could it be a £15 million move? Would the club settle for that? I think that's obviously a huge return on investment. Again, it's not the 20-25 million quid we've come to expect for the likes of Tierney and O'Reilly and Jota in the past few years. But if Kühn wants to go, I think the arrival of Nygren would sort of make room for Kühn to leave the club, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if he did depart this summer. That's one we'll keep an eye on as we go through the summer transfer window. Let us know in the comments if you think this could be the transfer window where Nicholas Kühn departs, but it looks like Benjamin Nygren is going to become a Celtic player. I think it's clear from the reports so far this summer that winger is a huge priority for the club this summer. We've already been linked with Sondre Orjaster, again from Sarpsborg, who were linked with in January. Michel-Ange Balikwisha from Royal Antwerp as well as another one from previous windows who have been linked with again. And Nelson Angulo from Anderlecht is a name that's cropped up over the last couple of weeks as well. So winger's clearly a huge priority. The concern you'd have with Orjaster and probably Balikwisha is that we've been linked over multiple windows now. And you look at the situation with Matthias Kvitsgarden, who it looks like we've missed out on. We were linked with him over the previous two windows, going back to last summer, and heavily in January. It looks like he might go elsewhere now. West Ham have been linked, Eintracht Frankfurt as well, who were there in January. The concern is that Celtic might have a short window to get these players. If a deal can be done in a window where there's not huge interest from other big clubs, then it basically comes down to, can you get it done? Can you pay the fee? Can you find a deal that works for you? Because if you let it go on too long and you miss them in that window, you're going to miss out on them long term. I think if a name circles around for 2 or 3 windows, the likelihood is that you miss out on them. It's not often that there's a long drawn out pursuit of a player and it goes to plan. There's usually a reason why it hasn't worked out. The first window that you've approached them or you want them. And as I say, with Kvistgaard, it looks like we've missed out on him. We don't want to be missing out on big targets because we've maybe procrastinated on it or we've delayed getting the deal done. So that's a concern, and I think there's a few concerns with the recruitment, a few question marks with the recruitment, as there always is with Celtic. I think if you look at the squad just now, the big players that you turn to in the big moments and the key players look like they're still Ange Postecoglou signings. Almost no one that Brendan Rodgers has brought in since he returned to the club has really grabbed the bull by the horns. You could make a case for Kühn, of course, who was brilliant at the start of last season, but as we say, has tailed off. I think there's question marks and big challenges for the recruitment team this summer, particularly again if we're going to lose 1 or 2 key players. We really need to refresh the squad, and we'll come back to that. That will be a thread throughout this three video series, talking about some of the shortcomings towards the end of last season. Were they physical? Were they mental? Were they technical? I think there's big challenges for the recruitment team this summer, and one of them is not missing out on key targets, not letting it drag on too long. And if we have a top target, doing everything we can with the resources that we have, which at this minute in time are as good as they have ever been, to get the deals that we need over the line. Loads of other names linked. We'll come back to these in a couple of minutes, but Hayato Inamura, 23-year-old Japanese centre-half, has been linked in the last 24, 48 hours. He's a left-sided centre-half. We're going to come back to that position in the pitch in a minute. We've also been linked with Josh Doig as well. We're going to look at left-back in a few moments as well. I find that one strange because I think a couple of weeks ago I saw that Doig was linked to a £13 million move to Juventus. So he's obviously, it's a swallow just now. He made that move from Hibs to Italy. He seems to have done really well, developed, and now there's interest in him to move on again. But there's no chance that Celtic are going to pay 10 to 12, 13 million pounds for him. And if clubs like Juventus are genuinely linked, you never know with these things. It could just be an agent putting a line out to the press to try and garner interest. But I find it difficult to believe that Josh Doig would come to Celtic this summer if that's the fee that Sassuolo are looking for, and that's the kind of clubs that are linked with him. So let's turn our attention then to assessing the Celtic squad. We're going to start with the goalkeepers. This will be really simple. It's a simple position in the pitch. We're going to have 3 goalkeepers. Kasper Schmeichel is the number 1. He had a great season last season. There's no denying that. He obviously made the high-profile mistake in the cup final, which did cost us late on in the game. But the injury aside, up until that point, he had been amazing. Hadn't really made any high-profile errors. Really calming influence. Again, took up a leadership role given his experience in the game. I think he's really helped us this season. We've talked about it at length. Last season we talked about it, how calm he is playing out from the back. I know that obviously 1 or 2 games there was shaky moments, but generally speaking he's really sharp and quick on the ball, and he's helped us build out from the back. A real improvement in that area of the game on Joe Hart, who was his predecessor, who was really good for us, but I think Joe was maybe a bit slower and maybe a bit more nervous when he had the ball at his feet, but Kasper can draw strikers closer towards him, and he's a lot calmer and a lot more precise with his passing out for the back. He's been brilliant. Let's hope he can keep those errors to a minimum as he did last season in this new campaign. But he's going to be the number 1, and his understudy will be Sinisalo, who I think we were all quite impressed with when he stood in for Kasper through that spell of injury. I know that after the fact, and it's easy in hindsight to say that maybe Sinisalo should have stayed in the team towards the end of the season and played the cup final. We don't know about Kasper's readiness with that shoulder injury, but again, it's easy to say that in hindsight. I think Sinisalo did well when he came in. He's done his chances no harm. I would like to see him play probably more this season, but again, it's an area of the pitch that Brendan Rodgers probably wants continuity. You don't want to be chopping and changing your goalkeeper too often. Again, early cup rounds are like the most feasible time to sort of introduce Sinisalo. You don't want to be going week to week in league matches, changing your goalkeeper. But I think Sinisalo's done well. He looks a confident young goalkeeper. He looks competent as well. I think his performance at Ibrox was really good. So there's promising signs there with Sinisalo, and again it'll be one for him where he'll be trying to build on last season. But looking ahead to Casper possibly departing at the end of next season, he'll want to be in a position where he can contend to be the Celtic number one. Now, there has already been a change in the goalkeeping department. Scott Bain has moved on from the best job in football, being Celtic's third choice goalkeeper, and he has signed for Falkirk. I think we released him on a free, terminated his contract, so to speak. I think he had 1 year left to run, but he was decent servant as a backup goalkeeper. For us, Scott Bain, he won loads of trophies. Now he's going to go to Falkirk, he's going to have to play more, he's going to have to face more shots, make more saves, and he's probably going to be on less money. But you can't have a cushy number forever, and it looks like Ross Doohan might be coming in to take up that mantle. He ticks the boxes in terms of being Scottish, which I think is good for the quotas in the UEFA squads. Third choice goalkeepers generally seem to tick those boxes. Ross Doohan did play a lot for Aberdeen last season when Mitov was out injured. He obviously came through the youth system at Celtic. It looks like he's going to return to the club on a free transfer, and as I say, take up that Scott Bain role. But that's it for the goalkeeping department. I don't think we need to add any more players there other than Doohan. I think we're pretty set with Schmeichel and Sinisalo as a competent backup. So moving on to the defence then, this is an area where I think the club have got a lot of work to do this summer. We'll start with right back, which I think is probably the area that we're most settled in. Alistair Johnston's obviously the first choice there. He's a key player for us. He's a big player. You'd probably put him in the top 4 or 5 players in the team in terms of importance. Again, we've watched him captain the club once or twice this season when other players have been out or been subbed off. He does have a leadership role within the team. I think his attitude to the game is big for us. He obviously loves the physical side of the game. He's aggressive at times. His marauding runs forward are key for us in attacking positions as well. But I think form aside, he maybe had 1 or 2 shaky moments last season, but Alistair Johnston's a huge player for us, and we've got Ralston there as backup, and I think in that position you're happy with Ralston because again he's come through the youth academy. He gives everything whenever he's asked to stand in for Alistair Johnston. We know that he's got certain limitations, but again, how good can your backup right back be? You're not going to get someone as good as Alistair Johnston who's happy to sit on the bench. Anthony Ralston played 20 times last season. A good few of those were from the bench, so it's difficult to make the case to bring in somebody at Alistair Johnston's level or near it and get them to be back up and be happy to sit on the bench for most of the season. I think Anthony Ralston is as close to an ideal backup as we'll get in that position. Now, moving on to centre half, this is where the big challenges are for the club. This is where there's huge question marks. Cameron Carter-Vickers is the number 1 centre half at the club. He has been for 4 years now. He is entering his 5th season with the club, and one of the transfer reports, the rumours that are going around just now, are that Leeds and Sunderland, who are newly promoted to the Premier League this season, are looking at Cameron Carter-Vickers to bolster their defensive options. Now, the big question for me with Carter-Vickers is, of course, you don't want to sell him. He's arguably the most important player in the team, or right up there behind Callum McGregor and Daisen Maeda, in terms of the confidence he brings to the defence around him. The goalkeeper, the whole team looks more assured and confident when Carter-Vickers is in it. But I think the big question mark with him is in his 5th season at the club, when he's seen it all and won it all, does he really want this challenge of being at Celtic again this season? Deep down, is that the thing that's going to drive him? Is that the thing that's going to motivate him to go through another season with Celtic? Because you do get that sense of some players having a cycle, and after 4 years at the club, does he really want to go to the well again? Does he sense that maybe at this stage of his career, is he going to get another chance at the Premier League? Is this the right time for it? Does that excite him more than staying at Celtic and having another push next season? I think those are the question marks around that. Obviously, if somebody stumps up 20 million quid, 25 million quid, whether that is where the fee would be, who knows? But if somebody offers big money, the club will have a decision to make, and ultimately it's got to come down to Brendan Rodgers and the player having a conversation and getting to the bottom of, Does he want to go to a new challenge, or is he really motivated to stay here at Celtic? I obviously would love to keep him. As I say, he's so important for us. And again, it would come back to, if we did lose him, could we replace him with someone of a similar calibre? I think that would be a very, very tall order. And like I say, in recent seasons with the recruitment, particularly at centre half, which we'll come back to in a second, we have struggled. We've really struggled to get a quality centre half in there to partner him. So replacing him seems like a daunting prospect, but for me, it's just about is his head in the right place to go again for another season at Celtic. His contract runs to 2029, so there's plenty of time on that. That probably would put Celtic in a strong position when negotiating any potential deal from clubs that want him. But it's all about the ball being in his court. Does he want to go again as a Celtic player? Moving on to left centre half. Liam Scales and Austin Trusty shared the minutes last season. I think there's huge question marks over both. I think everybody knows where I stand on Liam Scales. Even going back to 23-24, I thought we needed a stronger option, someone who's more competent and more assured on the ball, who can play a bit quicker, given the style that we play. I think, again, the cup final was an example of that. Scale seems to be the centre half that gets left on the ball most often. He can also be the pressing trigger for teams as well, and that puts an onus and a responsibility on him to be precise with his passing, but also carry the ball out as well at times when he's got that space and teams are letting him advance with it and trying to close him into certain corridors. I think we could do better, and when we brought in Austin Trusty for £5 million last summer, we hoped that he would be that player, but after his first season at Celtic, he's been really inconsistent. There's been times in the Champions League where he's put up really strong performances and we've been impressed by him, and then there's been other times domestically where he's been found wanting physically. You remember the game up at Dundee where Brendan Rodgers looked really unhappy with the physicality there in that 3-3 draw. There was a couple of other games like that where it looked like he could maybe be pushed around, and he dropped out of the team towards the end of the season, and Scales took that position. Again, I don't think that's the ideal setup where you're chopping and changing again your centre halves. I think Brendan Rodgers would much rather have continuity in that area of the pitch. But it says a lot about the recruitment at centre half that Brendan Rodgers is not comfortable with the options there. And nobody can really pin down that left centre half position. And that brings us back to Inamura, the 23-year-old Japanese centre half we've been linked with in the last couple of days. Left sided, can also play at left back. Again, just trying to watch some clips of him and understand the type of player that he is. I think when you talk about a left-sided centre-half who can also play at left-back, coming from Japan, most people will remember Yuki Kobayashi, who didn't make the grade at Celtic. He left the club without making any real impact, and he looked like he really struggled whenever he got chances in the first team. Now, that's not to say that Inamura would be of the same ilk and have the same difficulties, but again, when you're looking for some of the qualities that we lack at centre half with Scales, I think it's on the ball, and Inamura does look like a competent passer of the ball, but with Trusty, it's that physicality in duels, that aggression, standing up when you're going away to a team and they're trying to make life difficult for you and be physical and get up against you. You need to stand up and be counted for, and I think that's where Trusty at times this season has fallen short. So I think the situation at centre half is a really key one for Celtic. You can look at it in this way. You can frame it positively and say that if we've got Johnson at right back, Carter-Vickers at centre half, Tierney at left back, we're a strong left centre half away from having a really sound back four there, with a lovely balance with Tierney on the left side, Johnson on the right, and again loads of steel, loads of physicality, loads of strength. It's almost the ideal back four if we can find that missing piece at left centre half. But again, the club's recruitment in that position has fallen short, and if we look at the players who have been out on loan last season, there is obviously a couple of centre halves in there. Gustav Lagerbielke was on loan at 20. He played 32 times, scored 2 goals. I think by all accounts he had a decent loan spell there in the Netherlands, but you don't expect him to come back and stake any claim in the Celtic first team. I think he will be one that will look to move on this summer. Again, he's one of that batch of players that we brought in the summer of 2023 who didn't make the grade. Stephen Welsh is also coming back from his loan in Belgium. He played 19 games, but again, you don't look at him as someone who's going to come in and take that position at left centre half. There's absolutely no chance that's going to be the case. So we've got a lot of centre halves. Mike Nawrocki is there as well, who played 6 times last season. He's clearly out of favour with the manager. Again, he's part of that 2023 batch of recruitment, which really failed to make the grade. He is one who you think would want to move on personally from his point of view, because he's playing next to no football at all. He only played through necessity with injury, and then towards the end of the season, when we had won the title and we were really changing up the team, he played in that game at Pittodrie. But other than that, he's not had a look in. He doesn't seem favoured by Brendan Rodgers, and he's one that you think would want to move on, and the club should want to move him on as well. Again, we brought him in for the best part of £4.5 million from Legia Warsaw, and he hasn't cut it. There's so much waste in the recruitment at centre half in recent seasons between him, Lager Bielka. I'm not saying Trusty's in that category yet, but the jury is out on him, and we've spent £5 million. So again, centre half is, I think, behind striker, the biggest area that we need to get right this summer. We've got to get it right, whether that is keeping hold of Carter-Vickers, and like I say, getting everything right in terms of does he want to be here, but also the big question is, can we get a competent centre half of that level or near that level to play alongside him and complete that back four? Because like I say, we're probably only one missing piece away from having a really good defence. Tierney back on the left hand side, Johnson on the right hand side, Carter-Vickers there, and that missing piece at left centre half seems to be the one that has eluded us in recent seasons. Again, I think Scales will stay. I think Scales as a competent backup. I think at times through the season, when you're rotating, when you're going through the Champions League games, we had that period last season where there was midweek game after midweek game. It was 3 games a week for the best part of 2 months. You need to make changes, you need to rotate. That's what Brendan Rodgers did last season, and I think Liam Scales is ideal for that, to come in domestic games and stand in for a first choice centre half. Now again, I know he signed a new deal recently, and he may well not want to do that, but I think for us to progress and get better, and move to a higher level, we have to bring in someone to play at left centre half, who is better than the options that we currently have, and that will mean moving players on. So in summary, at centre half, I think we're going to have to move at least 2 players out of the club, and I think we need to recruit 1 in. Moving on to left back, Kieran Tierney's back. We've covered it. Brings a lot of good attributes to the squad. Great to see him back. Can't wait to see him in a Celtic jersey at Celtic Park again. He should come back a stronger player. There is that question mark about his fitness, about his injury record, but hopefully we can manage it properly, and he's doing all the right things, haven't had those bad experiences with the injuries. I know it's not always within your control, but hopefully he can stay fit and he'll be a huge play for us. But Greg Taylor looks like he is leaving the club. He was very close to a move to PAOK in Greece, it seemed, over the last couple of weeks, but that hasn't gone through yet. The latest club to be linked with him is FC Copenhagen in Denmark, so he's on the way out, and that leaves us with only one first team left back in Kieran Tierney on his return to the club. So we do need to bolster this position. We do need to bring someone else in. I think someone of Greg Taylor's ilk would be ideal, because Greg Taylor proved over his time here that, again, he's a competent player. He's won loads of league titles, loads of trophies, and he can deputise for someone like Tierney, and he could share the load with him. I think that's the profile of player that we need. As I say, Josh Doig has been linked. I don't see that happening at all. Be really surprised if we could bring Doig to the club this summer. James Penrice has loosely been linked as one that we're keeping an eye on as well. He's not as young as you might think, though. He's done well at Hearts, but would he be someone who fits that mould in terms of coming in to play backup to Kieran Tierney, but you'd be confident in him performing at domestic level whenever he had to chop and change with Kieran, whether that be just to rest him or to cover him in the instance of injury as well. So we definitely need a left back before this summer transfer window is out. I suppose it's strange to have two new players in a position, there is that sense of familiarity with Kieran. Not only is he returning to the club, but he's returning to the club to play under a manager who he's played under before as well. So you'd expect him to slot right back in, and it'll just be like the olden days. But I suppose for the new player coming in, he's going to have to fit into Brendan Rodgers' style, what he wants to do. And again, I think it's got to be someone who's happy to come to Celtic and know that they're not going to play the majority of games, but they're happy to push Kieran Tierney and share the minutes with him throughout the season. So, in summary, we definitely need one left back. That's clear. There is only one left back there just now, so Greg Taylor's departure will make room for someone to come in. And if you look at that as a checklist, as we round off the assessment of the defence, we need one centre half and we need one left back. I think we've got to move at least two centre halves out this summer, and I think that would be a good conclusion to the summer window. I think that would leave us in a stronger position, because we don't want to be carrying loads of players who don't have any chance of getting minutes in the first team, like Nawrocki this season. I know Lagerbielke's gone out on loan. These players who are signed in 23 on 4 or 5 year deals have still got time to run in their contracts, so it might be a case of getting them out on loan again if we can't get rid of them on a permanent basis. But I think we've got to get at least two centre halves out, get one in, and we need to get one left back in as well. Let me know in the comments if you disagree on those numbers at centre half. Would you like to see something else this summer? Would you like to see more players in? Would you like to see more defenders leave to make space for any new arrivals? Please let us know in the comments below. That rounds up the assessment of Celtic's defence. We'll move on to midfield next. That video will be out later in the week. Please, if I ask one thing of you, because it's the first video I've made for a few weeks, like the video below. That will tell YouTube that we still exist, that people still like watching the content, and it will get as many people back on as possible. I'll see you later on in the week. Thank you.